What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Valley coming at you with a very brief intro before we get into the shooting guard portion of our positional rankings installment. I just wanted to note very quickly that we recorded this before we found out that Zach LaVine was going to be out for the season. That is something that I think probably would have impacted both Grant and mine's rankings, but keep that in mind when we're talking about him and also some of the honorable mentions that might come thereafter. But that's enough. Let's hop to it. Top 10 shooting guard rankings from me and Grant coming at you right now. What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Valley coming at you with my certified fantabulous thermonuclear AF co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. We are on to our top 10 shooting guard rankings in this series. Go check out point guards if you haven't already. Small forwards and power forwards and centers will be coming. Everyone knows how we feel about positions on this podcast, but this ended up being a fun, instructive post-deadline exercise for us. Grant, how the heck are you doing?
Doing great. Ready to talk about some shooting guards today.
Who do you have as your number one shooting guard?
So I know this will differ from yours because we addressed this particular player differently as far as position, but I have Devin Booker number one. I think I really did struggle with him, and my number two is Donovan Mitchell. I think you could go either way between those two. And in fact, a lot of places categorize Mitchell as a point guard. I get it, but I'm not going to do that. I mean, the Cavs' best lineup has Darius Garland in it, and Darius Garland is absolutely a point guard. So that just by default, Donovan Mitchell isn't. Again, positional designations are fuzzy, but it felt like that was the 1-2 to me. And just like a notch below that starts a little bit of another tier for me. So maybe that's a decent place to stop and see where. I know you'll be different just because you have Booker as a point guard. So I'm curious what your top two were, or if there's like a tier that.
Yeah. So Booker made point guards for me, and he was top 5 for that. People, if you wanted to rank him number one, he's their point guard for me. Like, I just couldn't reconcile that. I do find it interesting that you decided to say this begins a separate tier for you, because I've Spider one. It's not even close. And I'm with you on why you put him as a shooting guard, by the way. He is, because that's what he is in like their most important lineups. And even like while he's been running the show in Cleveland, like without Garland, that's why he's going to be classified one as a point guard. But he's been doing like just a bunch of more collaborative stuff. I still have, so my number two guy, I would absolutely have in the same tier, even though I just don't. Spida has him on the, not defensively, but he has this player when it comes to passing, when it comes to the consistency with his off the dribble jump shot, Anthony Edwards. And so I find it interesting. I'm just curious why this starts a different tier for you, I guess.
Yeah, Edwards is 3 for me, pretty easily. But I just struggled with, like, when you start stacking up the numbers, Mitchell's outscoring him by quite a bit. Mitchell and Booker are both out assisting him. He's not, so like, just as if you put it in Basketball Reference and you can compare up to 6 players, this is not how I made this decision definitively, but I think this illustrates why I didn't have Edwards up there. Edwards leads in games played among Mitchell, Booker, Jaylen Brown, Irving, Bane, a bunch of other guys, but he doesn't lead in any other statistical category. Like, he's very good in a lot of things. And you could definitely say defensively, he's better than just about everybody. Maybe Jaylen Brown is there, but Edwards might be better. I just felt like the Booker Mitchell tier was just like more established and more statistically sort of defensible. But Edwards is definitely 3 with a bullet. I think he's more likely to move up than, how about this? He's closer to belonging with Booker and Mitchell than he is with the guys we'll start talking about next, I'd say.
So maybe I am admitting that he belongs in a different tier because I didn't consider him. If you're using Booker and Spider here, that's fine. But I didn't consider him over Donovan Mitchell or Devin Booker, but I still consider him in the same tier, which might mean that I have him in a separate tier, even though I was curious.
Yeah, he's like in a little middle ground, I think.
My number 3 ended up being, and I don't know if anyone would have this point, I have Kyrie. And the Mavs have like an offensive rating in the 95th percentile when he's playing without Luka. And that's point guard stuff from him. But like his ability to still make an impact as an off guard or share the floor with someone as ball dominant Luka, I value now. And so it's this hybrid guard role, but we have Luka as a point guard. I have to have Kyrie as a shooting guard. And regardless of, well, I shouldn't even say how you feel, because I'll just like, there's going to be the off court noise and the risk of something always happening or him saying something immoral or whatever. On the basketball court, I hate to bring it back to the way he is still one of the most electric
He's great
and best players in the league.
Yep. Totally agree. So he's 6 for me. And
Whoa.
the only reason, well, first of all, I love that we both put him at shooting guard because I think if you
That's
pull
what
the,
he's like.
that's what he plays, but most people
yeah.
think of him as a point guard, I think. But yeah, he's a 2, and also I put him here because I think shooting guard's probably the weakest position. So I needed some pop in there. So he's 6 for me, and the only reason he's behind 4 and 5, which I guess I can just say are Jaylen Brown 4, Desmond Bane 5, is the durability concerns and the off-court stuff. Like if I'm thinking about who I want for the rest of this year in the playoffs, I have to consider those things.
Okay.
So that chunk, that 4, 5, 6 is a pretty clear chunk for me as well. I think Irving is the best player of those 3 guys, of Brown, Bane, and himself, obviously. The availability and the, like, I don't know, unpredictability just in general around him. I feel like I just couldn't ignore that part of it. And he's played 27 games. Bane's played 37, Brown 46. So like that just matters for me.
Now that you frame it that way, I'm wondering if I looked at him too much in a vacuum and gave him sort of the benefit of the doubt there. I am interested. So we're about to, I think, go off the rails here. First of all, I'm annoyed that you made me use someone I had classified as a different position as we're trying to set this up. So my number 4 shooting guard is, and I'm not doing this as like just like I think you can guess now where I'm going with this. I have Derek White. And this is in part because I have Jaylen Brown as a small forward, so I'm curious as to why you classified him as a shooting guard as well. I know like the defensive matchups, and I guess because he's not really like this big facilitator, that's the case there. But when you have Derek White on this team, it just gets tough. Derek White does so freaking much defensively and even on offense, not just as a connector, but like he will give you some of that ball handling. So I have him a lot higher up than I thought. We're in lockstep with Bane's position now, though. You had him, or do you have him at 4? I had him you have him at 5. I have Bane at 5 as well, which he's injured right now, dealing with that ankle issue, but the volume he's been shouldering, like, and is still relatively efficient, like is still going to hit his threes. That's massive. And he's not, the defensive, I'm not going to say sieve, but like you don't have to work around him defensively the way that you need to with Kyrie or Donovan Mitchell.
I think too, maybe other than Booker, although it doesn't feel like Booker's been sort of stretched beyond his capabilities, like Booker's been asked to do something pretty different this year. Bane has, especially early in the year, Bane was really asked to like kind of explore some space that he hadn't really explored before. And the fact that, as you pointed out, like still shooting 38% from 3, he's got the highest effective field goal percentage of between him, Mitchell, Booker, Brown, Edwards, Irving. Like he's got the highest effective field goal percentage, despite like playing with G Leaguers and despite having to play more, lead initiator than he really ever has. Like you can make the case that like next year of all these guys, Bane, I mean, Edwards probably has the highest upside, but Bane has like the most potential to climb just if he gets in a situation where he's not asked to do quite so much. So yeah, I think Bane's right there at 5. I did have Derek White at 7.
Okay.
And to address the having him and Brown at the same position, I guess I've just I think you can really get away with Brown as a 2, 3, or even a 4. I think probably I'm anchored to Brown being more of a 2 historically. And I really do think of White almost as like a 1-2. The Celtics are a mess. Like they're the hardest. We've talked about this. Their position.
What were the hardest teams for you when it came to like actually having to pin down positions?
I think it has to be Boston because I don't see any other situations where I have 2 players in the same starting lineup at the same position. By definition, that's hard.
Boston, the Pelicans, and Brooklyn were just like bloodbaths when it came to having to do positional designations for me.
Also, again, I think shooting guard is the weakest spot of the 5, or it was at least like when you get to the end of it, it's like, oh, these guys, I don't love any of these guys, so I'm going to use any excuse I can to just get the best players I can at the position if it makes, if it comes close to making sense.
So my 6 and 7 guys were, and I think if this player was on a different team, he would be considered a point guard, like almost assuredly. I have DeJounte Murray at number 6. I also have, and look, this surprised me just to get to my number 7. I had CJ McCollum at number 7, and this surprised me a little bit as well. He's been better defensively this year. I think the Pelicans do a good job of insulating him when it comes to McCollum. I want to spend just a second, though, on Murray. He's like with the Hawks, their core lineups, Trey is there. Like he's going to be more of the off guard and he can do point guard stuff. He's shooting well, like off the catch from three. His pull up three is slumped a little bit, but like he's hit them this year. And I still think I just don't understand why the defensive discussion of him has shifted so much. Did they expect him to come and anchor a top tier defense? That is so hard to do from the perimeter. He's always been more of a disruptor. And like, if you put him with another rock solid person on the perimeter or an elite big man, that's when you're going to unlock the best version of DeJounte Murray. The Hawks have neither of those things like with him at the moment. So I think he's actually become underrated. Excuse me. And then CJ's been great. I struggled because a lot of the websites are going to have him classified as a point guard. But when you have a higher usage rate with Ingram and Zion, more of CJ's buckets are coming off of assists. And you're going to get more unassisted buckets from Zion and Ingram. They're averaging more assists than him. Brandon Ingram runs more pick and rolls. So it's just, I looked at it and then I looked at the defensive matchups and I'm like, the Pelicans were annoying with their positions. And so I was like, CJ had no prayer of making it among point guards, quite frankly. So I was like, I'm going to consider him a shooting guard because the Pelicans basically, I would argue, they just play without a point guard, if you want to frame it that way.
And having Herb Jones in that lineup, it makes it so like McCollum, if you're trying to figure out what position a guy is based on who they defend, it's just, well, Herb Jones defends the guy that's good and where it doesn't really matter what position that is. So McCollum becomes an even trick. Basketball Reference has McCollum over 90% of his minutes at point guard, which like, again, Basketball Reference is probably the least reliable positional designator of the different sources we use, but so McCollum does not make my top 10. Part of it's positional, part of it's the like, not, a better defense, but it's still a minus, I would say, on that end. And just like he's averaging 19 a game without great defense. So it's like, I don't know.
I was wrong about this and I missed on it at the beginning of the season. He's been, if we're looking at the names that are like on this, like he's been better defensively this year.
Yeah. So DeJounte Murray is 8 for me. And like, that's kind of where my confidence in this position just totally dies. Because from 9 through like 15, you could make an argument for almost anybody. And I'm really rethinking excluding McCollum because I don't love, especially 9, 10, 11 guys.
I could probably predict at least one fan base that is either sweating or annoyed right now.
Ooh, I don't know. So why don't you give me your 8 and 9 just so I can see if I need to like totally reevaluate my last 2 spots.
So I have at 8. So he is here. I have Bradley Beal. Okay. And he's tough because he missed so much time this season. But like I said, I'm ranking these guys as if I want them for the rest of the year. And he hasn't been to the playoffs a ton, but he has a proven track record in those situations. And I think efficiency's all over the place. He's had some very uneven games. He has done, I think, more. And part of this is just because he was absent to start the season. He's done more to try and fit in with this version of the Suns than anyone has needed to. I mean, Booker made the adjustment to me by shifting the point guard, essentially. So that's the bigger adjustment. I think he's been just a better fit in that larger context. And I think we're going to fast forward, assuming they're healthy, in like a month or something. It wouldn't shock me for like, well, why did they rank him behind CJ or me behind CJ, DeJounte, Desmond Bane, even Derek White? Like that's the level that Bradley Beal for the rest of the season could be the 3rd best shooting guard in the league behind Spida and Ant. Like those are the only 2 players on this list that I would say are guaranteed to outplay him. My number 9, I don't feel good about this. It's almost like I feel obligated to do this. The injuries are a red flag and he has not been his usual self this year. I have Zach LaVine. The dude is still just a bucket and brings one of the hardest skills just in general when you look at his off the dribble shot making. And yes, the percentages are all over the place this year, but do we think that that's just the new normal for him when you're looking at the rest of the season? If you want to leave him off because of health, sure. He's just so good. He has a case. If you throw out sample size for the rest of the season, this is someone who could also be maybe the 4th best shooting guard in the league. Like who in front of him on my list right now would you be prepared to say, aside from Spida and that, LaVine is not going to be better than these guys this year? Maybe Kyrie, but
yeah, no, I think Beal and LaVine both like, I think they're the ones we may look back at and say, we really overthought this here's the thing. So I was going to adjust, but I'm just going to go with what I had just maybe because the contrast will be interesting. So Levine doesn't make my list either, and that's health based mainly, because like this foot thing is not going away. It seems to have resurfaced. Who knows what the rest of his year is going to look like? And you do have the issue. I feel like that's we talked about this very recently. Like awesome shooter, like the premium skill of being able to get your own shot and create some for others, but like not a fluid passer, bad defender, and has just not been part of a lot of winning in a prominent role. So that knocks him out for me as much, again, it's really the health stuff as much as anything for him. So for 9, I am going to go Beal. You've talked me into Beal. I think that's an overthink if I'm not including him. But then after that, this is my favorite one of all. And I totally concede that this will potentially look stupid. I have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope as my 10th shooting guard.
Whoa.
And that is a testament to championships go where KCP, championships follow where KCP goes. 1, he is the most, like, he's not a star. Like a lot of these guys are stars and, or star adjacent, but he fits literally anywhere. He will guard whoever you need him to guard at the 1 or the 2, and he'll do it really well. He'll make open shots and he will take nothing off the table. So I think as an art, he's like the Danny Green. He's like the next Danny Green. And I could never shut up about how much I love Danny Green, just because that's what I think I want from this position. If I can't have a superstar, is a guy that will just complement every other player on my team on both ends and just make life easier for the other 4 guys. So there are so many like starrier guys that you could consider here, but I had KCP at 10 and I'm just not going to move him.
Wow. Good for KCP. And I hope Nuggets fans appreciate you doing some really heavy lifting there. When I look at the spirit of shooting guard, like his is so like he's
like 10 points a game. I think it's right.
And so, right. But you mentioned the defense and the assignments he has to handle. And I don't know if he's not probably there for me necessarily. I haven't gone through it, so I don't want to say anything too hot takey there. Like he could make all defense in theory. That was certainly for the first quarter of the season. He might have even been a certified lock there. I had my number 10 because I think that I'm going to value like the shot creation, the scoring. I figure that to be a more difficult role. I have Anthony Simons. I'm not sure if anyone knows how good of a season. Well, not anyone. Not enough people know how good of a season he's having. There are defensive limitations, but he's a more willing passer now. And this is what I value in a shooting guard is like, he's kind of right now. Like I don't even know if I should have Levine in front of him. He's like what you want Zach LaVine to be. He's a little bit more of a willing passer. And now his catch and shoot threes, he's just willing to get those off. He doesn't need to take the dribbles or hesitate on those, but he is going to hit his off the dribble jumpers. And so, and he's got real pop to him as well. And he's shooting almost 50% on drives, despite at times suboptimal spacing in Portland. I'm like, if I was, this is past the trade deadline, so I don't want to date this. I won't even mention it, but like, he has just been one of the best players. Like one of the best shooting guards to me, where I'm looking at this list right now and I'm like, does he really belong behind Levine and Beal? And I don't know. He was top 10 for me, just had to be a must include. My toughest cut. I'm not sure where you landed on these. I'll throw 2 names out there so that you can go through any other names you had. My 2 toughest cuts were Colin Sexton, who has been, especially lately, just a fucking monster. And then my other toughest cut was Tyler Hero, who is just, this position is barren, or what do we say? Desolate hellscape. Desolate hellscape. If it
includes Zach LaVine, we have to use that terminology.
But like, and he's not efficient. Like you really can't build a case for him unless you just want to ding Beal and Levine for the availability this season. Mm-hmm. But he has this skill of like hitting difficult shots matters when you look at getting to the mid range and hitting off the dribble threes.
Yeah, I think as I'm looking at my list, including Brown, because people are going to say like, well, the Celtics start Holiday and White, and Brown just is not a shooting guard. So that gives me some regret, because then I wouldn't have snubbed quite so many guys if I had just thrown Brown at small forward. But we are where we are. I think Austin Reeves, I would have considered. Didn't make my list. McCollum is probably one of the toughest cuts. Levine, ditto. Although the injury makes that a little easier. I'm trying to think who else. Herb Jones, just as someone I thought
I had him too. Yeah. And I like fudged it because he could be a 2, 3, or 4, really, when you look at his. But he's been, I will say, I don't normally do this when it comes to defense. I think it might be a borderline crime if he's not all defense this year.
He's so good. Down the ballot, he doesn't play enough, but Dante DiVincenzo's like permanent stats stack up so well against some of these other guys. I didn't seriously consider him, but I wanted to mention his name. Yeah, so I think McCollum, Levine, Reeves, Simons for sure were pretty tough cuts. But sorry, I gotta get KCP on here, and I'm not gonna walk that one back.
Other names I had, and I'm sorry if you mentioned any of them. I had Lou Dort, Buddy Hield, Jordan Clarkson, Dante DiVincenzo, and Alex Caruso, who's like, he could have gone in any guard spot, but I mentioned him here because he never would have had he had a case here. He didn't have a case among point guards.
Right. Yeah. That's part of it, is like, you're going to shoehorn guys into spots where you can at least justify talking about them. Interesting. Okay. Well, we're very close at the top, but
you want to recap your top 10?
Makes it tricky. Yeah. I'll do mine first. So my shooting guard rankings: Devin Booker 1, Donovan Mitchell 2, Anthony Edwards 3, Jaylen Brown 4, Desmond Bane 5, Kyrie 6, Derek White 7, DeJounte Murray 8, Brad Beal 9, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope a controversial 10.
So I had at number 1, because I had Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker as a point guard. I have Donovan Mitchell at 1, Anthony Edwards at 2, Kyrie at 3. I'm rethinking that one a little bit. Derek White at 4, Desmond Bane at 5. I'm even rethinking that one because of all the time he's going to wind up missing. DeJounte Murray, I have at 6, CJ McCollum at 7, Bradley Beal at 8, Zach LaVine at 9, Anthony Simons at 10, and I'm already like prepared to put him at number 2, apparently. So that's where I ended up here. Yeah, you're right. We were pretty close at the top. The KCP, I tip my cap to you for it. Nuggets fans, go follow Grant, give him hugs.
I just want to say, I said up front that the playoffs are going to matter, and these are subjective. I'll acknowledge there's no statistical case for KCP.
No, I mean, like you said it. Championships follow him where he goes. Like, it's just like that's what the CP stands for, is Kentavious Championship Player. Like, that's just what he is.
Did you make that up, or is that a thing already?
No, I tweeted that like off the cuff like a couple months ago, and Nuggets fans loved it. I thought it would have been something, but like, because it's sitting right there, but like you're not wrong. And like, look at basically, so the Pistons, remember he used to be in the max contract discussion, and then it's like, so he went to the Lakers, proves he's a winning player there, then goes to the Wizards, and it's clear that like, you know, the Lakers lose that trade, and then it's clear the Wizards lose that trade that sends him to Denver. It's just like, so he's not just a winning player, if you move him, you're going to come off on the losing end of it. Am I going to say the Pistons are in their desolate hellscape right now because they never paid him? Who's to say?
Well, look at where he's. I mean, other than like the Wizards,
they did pay him, by the way. It's like a short-term deal, but you know what I mean.
If you trade KCP, you're making a mistake. Let's just leave it there.
Can you take us out of here? This was a fun one.
Yeah, the more we differ, the more interesting it is. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you haven't already, make sure you follow us on the socials at HardwoodKnocks. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, wherever you listen to us or watch us. Help the algorithm love us back by commenting on YouTube, upvoting. Everything you can do to positively impact our reach would be greatly appreciated. I think that's enough of an outro. If you want to get on our Discord, and if you're interested in our merch, links for that are in the YouTube and podcast description. We close, as always, with a shout out to the one and only Frank Ntilikina and an apology to Jared Allen.